everybody, and thank you for checking out this week's episode of Vintage Mego. Our subject this week is on a lot of people's holy grail lists. The original Aquaman versus the Great White Shark playset from 1978. 1978 was probably the last great year for the world's greatest superheroes brand. Mego was still selling the 8-inch World's Greatest Superheroes in assortments, meaning that, to get Superman, you had to get a variety of other characters, and that would change in later years. They would start to ship solid cases of popular characters like Hulk, Spider-Man, Batman, and that would start the slow decline of the assortment. Characters would be cut from the team from 79 right down to 82, where it's really down to just a few characters. The winds were changing in other directions as well. Mego was still heavily invested in superheroes. However, they were trying and exploring other formats. In 78, you see it with the launch of the 12-inch heroes. They had been selling the 12-inch heroes in foreign markets prior and, of course, enjoying success with the Wonder Woman fashion doll. But they really went all out for the Superman movie and released and launched several different characters in 12-inch format that year. Higher price point, better detail. That Mego's focus would be on superheroes for the next 4 years. However, there would be no new releases in the 8-inch category. And that's what makes this set so special. This is the last thing released for the world's greatest superhero 8-inch line. Its inspiration comes mainly from the release of Jaws 2 that year. The first Jaws movie was a pop culture phenomenon that toy makers really didn't see coming. I mean, the master toy license seemed to be Imperial Toys, which was a rack toy manufacturer. No one in the majors really touched Jaws. That changed with Jaws 2 when everybody was ready for another, shark mania. Fortunately for Mego and a lot of other toy companies, you can't really copyright a shark. You can't use the word Jaws, but otherwise, you can make sharks all day long. The same thing happened when the first Jurassic Park movie came out. There was just knockoff dinosaurs everywhere, and I think Kenner was really trying hard to differentiate theirs by putting a tattoo that said Jurassic Park on all the dinosaurs. The concept is fairly simple. It is a wind-up bathtub shark that Aquaman is supposed to fight. I thought they were friends. I don't know. Some interesting controversy exists in the 1978 catalog where Aquaman is clearly shown without gloves and having webbed hands. This seems to be another subtle nod to the popularity of the Man from Atlantis TV show, which Mego did not have the rights to. Kenner actually had the toy rights to the Man from Atlantis. I think this got abandoned rather quickly, and Mego just put the stock Aquaman in there. However, a collector friend I know does actually own a web-handed Aquaman. He got it on eBay, and the seller also had a shark. So maybe this was the prototype, maybe this was a mock-up. I'm not sure. I've held it, I've inspected it. It bears a certain tell that all Mego prototypes and factory samples bear. It is legitimate. The set itself got a pretty wide release. People remember seeing whole end caps of them at places like KB. And it even made it into the Heroes World catalog, where it was going for a pricey $12.95. That seems like a lot for back in the day. It was not a hit. A lot of people remember seeing it on clearance, and it was only available for 1 year. So take the fact that it only had a single year of production and combined it with the high demand of the world's greatest superheroes line, and it's a powerful cocktail that we know called the Holy Grail toy. It's rare. There's a lot of people who want one. Collector fireworks. At one point, these things were actually fetching close to $10,000 in the box in mint condition. However, I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm not sure of an actual value for a really nice condition boxed Aquaman versus the Great White Shark. I'm sure it would still fetch thousands of dollars. But whenever they show up on eBay, they tend to have a really high price tag. And I often think it's just the owner wants to share his piece, or the item isn't really for sale, but if you wanted it, this is the price that would get it. And nobody's biting. I don't see much traction. The same pieces keep showing up year after year, and unfortunately they have lofty prices. It would be really interesting to watch an auction for one of these and just see what the going rate is these days. I've had several opportunities to own one of these and have fumbled the ball a few times. The worst one being Chiller Theater in 1994, where I actually found one of these under the table. The woman wanted $250 for it, which was almost all the money I brought to the show. I mean, I was in college at the time. I put it down. I walked away. A minute later, I turned back to the table to buy it, only to see Lenny Lee, publisher of the Lee's Action Figure News magazine, holding it going, "Look what I just got. It was only $250. Dough. The piece I own actually is something I held at the 2004 Mego Con in New York City, and my hotel roommate for the weekend actually ended up buying it, so I've actually held this before. It is not a C10 piece, and I won't be sending it for grading. I'm just really grateful to have a boxed example of it. I never thought I'd own it, and I was lucky enough to get this at a price range where I could afford it. It was on Hakes Americana Auctions, and I got it for the opening bid, which shocked me as much as it would you. Figures Toy Company famously did a recreation of this item in 2017, I want to say. It was a fairly accurate depiction. It's a nice piece. I've done side-by-side comparisons of a vintage shark and the new shark, and it's pretty darn close. A lot of people think that demand has declined due to this reproduction, but I actually think it's kind of threefold. One, the piece really isn't a canonical superhero piece. A lot of people can live without this shark that's clearly just meant to ape Jaws. Two, the barrier to entry on this piece just got too high. The box shark piece goes for thousands, and a lot of people just don't have that kind of scratch to spend on toys. I know I certainly didn't. And then, of course, three, the reproduction would whet the demand of people who simply just want the piece but aren't willing to pay the high collector price for vintage. I argue, though, that those folks would have never really entered into that arena anyways, so I think that it's scratching an itch, but demand still exists for original vintage shark. What's your take on it, Mego Superhero Collectors? Is this something you need in your collection, or is it something you can live without, or you're fine with the reproduction? I'd really like to know, either on our Facebook page, Mego Museum, our forums over at megomuseum.com, or, of course, right in the comments below this video. Thank you for watching, and thank you very much for all the great feedback. I hope you'll hit like and subscribe if you're new. We do this weekly, and it's always about Vintage Mego.